solution to poor journalism is more journalism. But some people want less of it, or none of it. They want to stamp out journalism altogether. Now, do you think I'm exaggerating? I don't think I am. We need to see this for what it is and describe it clearly. There's a big difference between well-meaning people who are skeptical of the press, I count myself among them, and then those people who want to tear down the press, who don't want it to exist. Those anti-journalism voices are getting louder these days, partly because they're being amplified by some pretty powerful politicians. Amid so many shouts of fake news, media companies producing real news need to speak loudly. Here's how I see it. Skepticism is healthy. Constructive criticism makes newsrooms better. We need it. This is a pro-journalism point of view. When I make a mistake, or I don't challenge a guest enough, or I cut somebody off, your emails, I get them, and they help me improve. But it's not constructive. It's not pro-journalism to promote resentment and hatred of journalists. It's not pro-journalism to say what the Republican governor of Maine said the other day.
I just love to sit in my office and make up wasted so they'll write these stupid stories. I mean, they are just so stupid, it's awful. I'm sorry, but I tell you, the sooner the print press goes away, the better society will be.
That is an anti-journalism mentality. It's not new, but it's getting worse now. Remember when President Trump called the media the enemy of the people? When politicians disparage real news as fake, or when they root for the death of newspapers, or when they call reporters names, or when they claim we make up stories and sources, they're not trying to improve journalism. They're trying to get rid of it. And they're giving cover to extremists who go even further. Smears, lies, death threats against journalists, equating reporters to ISIS terrorists. You've probably seen this stuff on your Facebook feed. These anti-journalism tactics are not aimed at eradicating bias or improving news coverage or even creating alternative sources. These attacks are about eliminating news coverage. I'm sorry to say, these people, these trolls, they're media illiterate. They don't really know how newsrooms work. And that's all the more reason why newsrooms and media companies need to take media literacy seriously. Constructive criticism, holding us accountable when we screw up, we need that. But at the same time, newsroom bosses and media company owners need to mount a defense of the work that journalists do day in, day out. Because right now, these anti-journalism voices are insidious. They're wrong, but they're getting louder. That's my personal view. Others may disagree. This week, several prominent media critics said the press needs to stop obsessing over President Trump's anti-media attacks. Kyle Pope, the editor and publisher of the Columbia Journalism Review, said the media's response, quote, has become counterproductive. And Kyle is here with me now. Kyle, I think these anti-media attacks then give cover to these extremists who promote hate online. I think they're a big deal, a really big story. But you think we're probably spending too much time covering them?
I think they're a big story too. But I think we need to think about, you know, what are we, 6 months in now in this administration? The president has probably tweeted 100 times that CNN is fake, the New York Times is failing, the Washington Post makes up things. None of that is true, but he keeps saying it. So if he says it the 101st time, do we keep giving it the same amount of airplay? I think that it's time for us to think about recalibrating how we think about this. And I mean, the goal for all of us is to think about how can we reach people with this critical message that there is a real threat to journalism being waged here. This is a real thing. You had Ben Jacobs on, who that was a real thing that happened to him. And these threats are real. But I'm not sure that the response is getting that message across effectively. I mean, the one thing I've learned in journalism is that it's not about us. It's very rarely about us. It's about something else. In this case, I think it's about President Trump. And what is his mindset? What is his mentality? What is the mentality of the people around him when it comes to the First Amendment and protecting the freedom of the press? And we have to ask ourselves, as you point out, I mean, there needs to be some skepticism applied to this. And we need to think about, are we doing what is most effective in terms of conveying this very important message? And there have been cases, I think, when we haven't.
When journalists try to calculate like this, though, you wrote at CJR, the president's fully aware that this war against the press is one of the few things that is working for him. But if journalists take that to be true and then avoid it, isn't this a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation? You shouldn't be making coverage decisions based on what benefits the president or not?
I think that's true, but I do think that we have to question what is the value. I mean, he's saying the same things over and over again, right? There's not a lot of new messages. There's new approaches, there's new videos, there's new outrages, but the message itself isn't the same. It is the same.
Okay.
So I think it's time for us to sort of just take a step back and think, how do we cover this in an effective way? How do we cover the big issues here, which are, what is the value of a press and a democracy? What are we telling people that they need to know? And what I fear, and what I think is happening, is that the way we're covering it and the volume in which we cover it is turning people off, and they're not hearing that message. That is something that we all need to be worried about.
Biggest story you think's been undercovered as a result of this?
Sorry?
What's the biggest story you think has been undercovered when we focus a lot on the president's tweets about the media?
Everything is being undercovered. I mean,
come on.
I mean, the EPA is being dismantled. The federal bureaucracy is being entirely remade. There is a lot of threats against the media at the state and local level. I was fascinated by the conversation you had with the guy from Iowa. I mean, this is happening in a real way all across the country. I just think, I mean, what I'm not saying is that the attacks on the press aren't a story. I'm saying that every presidential tweet need not be a story at the volume that we're giving it.
Not the lead story, not the page
not the
one
lead story, not the story over and over and over again.
Kyle, thanks for being here.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you.
Thank
you can read the full column on chr.org. And